Distinguished guest, Chairman, Board Director, of the Gayani Korea Foundation, Session Chair, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. To commence today's afternoon session by Ms. Gayani Alwis, I would like to introduce our panelists today. So the session will be chaired by Ms. Chitrani Kure, former CHRO DGM Corporate Communications and Sustainability. Shiranti Kure, sorry about that, at HNB. The four eminent panelists will be Dr. Nisha Arunathilaka, Director Research IPS, Ms. Eranti Premaratna, Consultant ILO, Mr. Shan Yahampat, Advisor to the Minister of Labour. I'm afraid he is not able to come today, so he has excused himself, and Dr. Roshan Pereira, Advocata. Before we commence today's proceedings, I would like to play a small introductory video regarding the Gayani Korea Foundation and its project, the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum. I hope you enjoy this.
The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, is an initiative of the Gayani Korea Foundation aimed at meaningfully contributing towards resolving the complex economic issues confronting the country today. The Gayani Korea Foundation was founded to take forward the passion of Dr. Gayani Korea to achieve just and equitable economic development in all countries. The late Dr. Gayani Korea was an internationally renowned Sri Lankan economist and an outstanding product of the universities of Cambridge and Oxford. Born on the 4th of November 1925 to Dr. C.V.S. Korea and Freda Korea, sister of Sir John Kothalavala, the then Prime Minister of Ceylon. Dr. Gayani Korea's grandfather and granduncle were the famous freedom fighters from Chilo, Victor Korea, who was a member of the Legislative Council of Ceylon, and Charles Korea. His uncle, Sir Claude Korea, was at the forefront of Sri Lanka's entry onto the world stage at the independence and for many years thereafter. Gayani Korea was educated at the Royal College Colombo, after which he started his higher education at the University of Ceylon in 1944, before going to study at Corpus Christi College, Cambridge, and Nuffield College, Oxford from 1945 to 52. There he obtained 2 BAs and MAs from the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge, and a DPhil from University of Oxford. He was the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate in economics. He was also the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate from Oxford University in any subject. He was a key member of the Planning Committee for Sri Lanka's first 10-year plan, 1959, which sought to raise economic growth and reduce poverty. Among his numerous achievements was his appointment as the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, where he negotiated the terms of the Lome Convention, a landmark agreement providing development and access to European markets to Africa and the Caribbean. He was an early proponent of the equitable development who worked tirelessly for trade and development in developing countries. The Gayani Korea Foundation provides opportunities for meaningful economic engagement through rigorous multidisciplinary research to promote inclusive and sustainable development. The Gayani Korea Foundation, an autonomous non-profit institution, is committed to making a real and lasting difference in the lives of vulnerable people. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, has been conceptualized by Gayani Korea Foundation to bring about change and infuse innovation into the processes of democratic governance and sustainable economic development. It aims to pursue in-depth research and dialogue, focusing on core sectors that need to be addressed, and suggest innovative, results-oriented policy strategies to resolve the current economic crisis. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum will bring together the like-minded thought leaders and industry stakeholders to discuss, debate and agree on pressing issues in a variety of sectors and devise alternative, sustainable economic models, processes and practices. A group of thought leaders who are also subject experts have been assigned to review the issues papers and provide necessary guidance and relevant research material to the respective authors. SLIF will transcend boundaries and barriers and invite specialists from all over the world to contribute their expert views and knowledge to enable Sri Lanka to face its current challenges effectively. 20 identified sectors have been assigned to experts to research and write issues papers on contemporary issues which have an impact on socio-economic development. The discourse will commence with questions that should be raised on good governance and administrative reforms. The other topics are tourism, export-oriented industrial development, macroeconomic policy, poverty reduction, reforming Sri Lanka's state-oriented enterprises, Sri Lanka's electricity and petroleum industry, Sri Lankan food crops, livestock and fisheries, transportation and highways, education, healthcare, shipping and logistics, international trade and investment, subnational policies, environment, women and development, ethnicity and socio-economic development, information technology, and foreign policy. The outcome of these issues papers forms a blueprint to be presented to policymakers as a landmark contribution from the Gayani Korea Foundation towards strengthening the economic recovery of Sri Lanka. You are invited to join the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum by logging on to the Gayani Korea website. Fill in the registration form, choose an area of expertise where you would like to share your knowledge, advice and comments on the issues papers posted under each thematic area. Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, beyond the barriers of tradition.
Thank you. I would now, in order to commence today's session, I would like to invite the session chair, Ms. Chirantha Kure, to take her seat, please. And then I would like to also invite our Gayani Alwis, our lead writer on the paper. Would you like to take your seat, please? And our three eminent panelists, Dr. Nisha Arunathilaka, Ms. Eranti Premaratna, and Dr. Roshan Pereira. I would now like to invite our Deputy Chairman of the Gayani Korea Foundation, Dr. Harsha Athurupana, to deliver the welcome speech.
Let me extend a warm welcome to all of you who have come for this session, and also, of course, to see the eminent group of speakers, panelists, and chairperson. I don't have to make a long welcome speech because I think the video introduced the Gayani Korea Foundation and the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum very clearly and very well. Just to say that this is, I think, the 8th or so session that we are having in the series of the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum. And what we plan to do with the publications, with the papers that have been written, is that after each session like this, where the paper is presented to an audience of experts in the area, based on the comments received, they will be finalized and published by the Gayani Korea Foundation, and then they'll of course be available for any interested researchers, academics, policymakers, anyone interested in the papers. And I look forward to the discussion today following the presentation by Gayani here. So over to you, Gayani, and the chairperson, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha and Dr. Lloyd, and especially Dr. Lloyd. Thank you for inviting me to write this issue paper, one of the 20 issue papers that Gayani Korea Foundation has undertaken to publish. I'm privileged to undertake this task, and today's objective is to talk about the key highlights. And since we wrote that article, a lot of things also have changed, so I will also be adding new things which is not part of the issue paper. And like Dr. Harsha Athurupana mentioned, we will be updating based on the feedback that all of you give, plus the panelists as well. So women and development. So we know before that I'll show you just a rough outline of what my presentation in the next 30 minutes. Try my best to finish it within that time frame. So honey, if I just go over, just give me 5 minutes before, give me a shout, right? So I will just briefly introduce and then talk about the challenges for female labor force participation. I mean, most of it is known, but we will talk about it. And then what are the proposed recommendations, and then concluding remarks. So we all know 52% of our population, 21 plus million population, is females, right? So we know that. And our literacy rates also very high. Of course, we are still lagging behind the males, but we are generally, if you compare with the others, our literacy rates also very high. And we all know that birth rates are slightly coming down, plus we are moving towards a very aging population. So we have a dearth in the skill in the market. So that's the challenge. And we also see now, I mean, skill migration, skilled and unskilled both, but now we see it in an exponential rate. Daily we see the queues in front of the passport office and all of that. So brain drain is a significant problem in this climate that we are in economic crisis. And therefore we have a shortage of skilled personnel in the labor market. But sometimes I don't fully agree with whether there is a skilled shortage, but we also sometimes see, I mean, I've been in many panels at interviews, sometimes you get good candidates, but the jobs that you have, either the person who's coming for the interview doesn't fit into that job, but they're quite qualified, but they would like to stay in this country. But problem is maybe there is no visibility about the jobs that are there. So demand supply, there is no formal way to match these two, matchmaking part of it. So that sometimes I wonder whether do we really have a problem also in this country, right, in certain areas. So, but anyway, generally the feeling is that there's a shortage of skilled personnel in the labor market, and therefore we are not a labor surplus economy anymore, right? And also Sri Lanka by and large, although we are now in the Industry 4.0 era, I would say Sri Lanka is around like 2.0, like that. Ministry of Industry is doing a study to understand what level that we are in now. So I hope the output will be known to everybody that where we are. But we are still relying on highly labor-intensive production activities. And also this is going to be a viable thing anymore in the current context, therefore, right? And we also, therefore, having this skilled shortage, as I mentioned to you, from both ends of the skill pyramid, like the top end and the bottom end both. Therefore, our current thinking about like how do we really grow the economy, unless you engage everybody, all available gender, I mean the balance 52%, you will not be able to come out of this issue that we are currently in. So therefore we need to look at labor productivity improvement, therefore technology automation usage, plus how do we get more women into the workforce, because already we are not in the optimum level when you compare with the global average. So how do we really bring them more to be brought into the world of work is what we need to really look at. So that is when we can activate the economic activities, and therefore we can actually hopefully come out of the woods as well. So we all know, this is a known fact, but I wanted to be a bit colorful so that you will not get bored. So we know, as per the Atlas of Economic Complexity, we know the biggest foreign exchange, Middle Eastern foreign remittances, then the apparel industry, and also the tea industry, all of it is powered by women. We all know that, right? But however, that is at the bottom end of the job pyramid. So that's another problem. So we have huge number of women who are engaged in these industries, but they have lots of challenges and they are not able to move up the pyramid and take up higher level, get into management and beyond management and go and break this so-called elusive glass ceiling. I have a different perspective about it, but that's been widely spoken about. And when you look at the Middle Eastern remittances, also IPS have done a study, and in that it is shown that if you look at, I think the last figure was 200,000, I'm sure that must be more now. In the Middle Eastern countries, there are more women who's going there. I mean, if you really look at the ratio, in the whole of Asia, Sri Lanka is having the highest number of women in the Middle East, especially again at the lower end of the pyramid, doing mostly domestic chores, right? So another important factor there is that while men remit about 80%, I don't know in the current context whether still it's happening, but 80%, but women by and large remit almost 81 to 100%. So that also says by, women genuinely send it back. I'm not trying to differentiate, but that's the fact. So that's what research has found out. So therefore, do we really want more women to go out and get them to work for somebody else? Or there are other social issues that we see when that happens. But how do we really retain them? And also when we bring them back, how do we really get them gainfully employed so that other societal issues can be minimized as well? So those are things that we need to be mindful. Right. So before we move on to the topic per se, I just wanted to, all of you know this, but we all talk about SDG 5, gender equality, we want to empower and have equality in whatever we do and empower women and girls, right? So what do you mean by this gender parity or gender equality? Is this you have to provide equal participation and opportunities for men and women alike in all aspects of life, not in specific areas. So do we really have that? Is a question that we all should ask, and we will see if that is not the case. Yes, we know that, but then what is it that we need to do in order for us to bring it closer? Let me go back to the global situation. The latest Global Gender Gap Report of 2023, which was shared a few months ago, it says, very disheartening, for gender parity to be achieved, it will take 132 years. Last year's report, it was 131 years. We just slightly gone back, right? And globally, gender gap has been closed by 68.4% only. So we have a long way to go. Having said that, should we be negative about it? No. When there is a divide, we need to do something about it. So there's an opportunity for us to do something to gainfully get these issues sorted it out and gainfully get these women into the workforce. So just wanted to build on the parameters in the Global Gender Gap Report. I don't know whether it's very clear to you. So there are 4 parameters. One of the parameters is economic participation and opportunity. So do we have the same economic participation opportunity for the women as the men? So here, Sri Lanka figure is, this is the score is given from 0 to 1, and this is if I can see it correctly, 0.603, right? Then educational attainment, yeah, quite good there, 0.988. That is because we have free education in this country. Whether the quality of education is right or not, we have free education, and that is actually a positive thing. And the third thing is health and survival, right? There again, we have free health service. And there again, we are up there. We are actually number 1. There are so many number 1 positions because so many countries have that. But we are, contrary to the other parameters, we are up there. And then we look at the political empowerment, which is abysmally low. We are at a very, very low level. We know out of the 225 parliamentarians, I think it's only 5% is only women, 12 or something, right? So that's the situation. That may be one reason why we are in this situation, because our issues are not getting discussed adequately at the parliament. And if you listen to the parliament proceedings, you know what they discuss, right? So this is the situation. So our ranking in the Global Gender Gap Report is 115 out of 145, right? So in fact, if you look at South Asia, Bangladesh and Bhutan, it's not Bhutan, it's Maldives. Maldives are ahead of Sri Lanka in South Asia. Sometimes you might think that being a Muslim country in Bangladesh, they may be lagging behind, but it is not the case, right? So little Maldives also ahead of us. So, but anyhow, we need to really take this seriously, identify each and every, if you are interested, go into details, you will know each and under each and every parameters, what is it that we need to do. When they next do the Global Gender Gap Report, at least the right information is available. You know, in this country, we don't have information, it's scattered, access to information. So when they do the survey, if that is not accessible, they will not then really pick that up, and that will not get reflected in the report. So as I mentioned to you, like female political representation at a national level is pretty low, 5.3%, and that reflects our position in the Gender Gap Report as well. Now, if I just talk about another score, that is Women, Business and the Law, which is actually supported by World Bank as well. So globally, if you look at women, still have only 3/4 of the legal right of men, and nearly 2.4 billion women of working age still do not have the same legal right as men. Right? So that's again an alarming situation. So in this score, Sri Lanka's overall score is 65.6. South Asia average is 63.7. We are a bit better than South Asia. If you look at the ranking score, there are 8 parameters that they look at: the mobility, the workplace, all these related to in each and every area. What are the law governing these aspects? Mobility, workplace, pay, then marriage, parenthood, then entrepreneurship, assets, and pension. So if you look at the 2021 indicator, the detailed one, Sri Lanka has scored 100 for mobility, and then marriage, and the areas that we are lagging behind are pay and the pension and the parenthood. So the law governing specific things in that, for example, if I may mention, the pensionable age of men and women is different. So that's why we don't have a law governing that, whereas when you compare other countries. And also under that, for if you take leave for child care, whether it is not factored into your pensionable income. So that's another issue. But Pakistan, strangely, in the entire region, Pakistan has factored that. So we need to understand those aspects, whether it really makes sense for us, whether we can prioritize that, identify where the problems are, we need to look at that. And if you look at gender pay gap, government sector, we don't have a problem. But in the private sector, we've seen this, in some places, although it's not visibly available, but it is there. And that also. So there are different laws governing various aspects that we need to really look at. And again, detailed information is there. So if you really work on it, maybe the real relevant authorities can work on it, make the information available. If we don't have laws, then propose to the legislature to work on it so that we can get a higher score, because these are things that investors and external people look at us. So that will be a plus point for the country, and it boosts the image and the way we do things, and that will help us to come out of the woods, and that's where we are now. So business case is very clear, right? McKinsey study that was done some time ago, and they clearly said that by improving gender parity, $12 trillion could be added to the global GDP by 2025. What's interesting is about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has, this was done before COVID, but still it's relevant, I think, maybe plus or minus. But Sri Lanka has the potential to add $20 billion per year to its GDP by 2025, which would increase our current economic growth trajectory by 14%. So isn't it clear? Business case is very clear. It's not a nice thing to do. It's the smartest thing to do. I think what business case is very clear. Even the World Bank, one of the World Bank officials some time back also said Sri Lankan economy specifically could grow by as much as 20% in the long run by closing the gender gap in the workforce. So business case is very clear. I'm sure all of you all are convinced that's why you're here. But we need to take it to the masses. We need to understand what is it that we need to do. What are the things that we need to do specifically so that everybody in the workplace, everybody at home, whoever wants to by choice want to stay at home and be a mom, that's a different story. But those who are already eligible and willing to come to the world of work, do we provide that equal opportunity is something that we need to really look at. Okay, so historical perspective. So you all know that by 1948, Universal Declaration of Human Rights affirmed with equal rights for men and women. And as per our constitution also, we have provisions on promoting and protecting rights of women and children. And we also ratified CEDAW in 1980. And we have a Women's Charter which was done in 1993, and National Action Plan for Women, which was later amended in 2013. And there are few acts and laws that are available. So what's important is to understand what do we do with these things. Are we really active? Are we implementing these things? Are people aware of these things? That is what is important. How do we take it to the masses? Do you know your rights? All that has to be understood, and then that we can really make actionable things to improve the situation. So everybody knows this, female labor force participation is on the decline. It's quite a mystery for me. I'm sure for most of you also it's the case. We were very high and then slowly coming down at a rate. But sometimes I feel like not believing this figure, because there is so many women involved in informal sector, whether our census and statistics is capturing that information or whether they are not coming forward and telling that information. It's a two-way thing. So maybe if women are the top foreign exchange earners to this country, plus doing everything, how come it is not getting captured in these statistics is something that we need to really look at. Again, we need to see those who are the women, the total population of women. If you look at 64% of them are not willing to work. So that's their choice. But the rest of them, maybe situation might change. I think, Nisha, you were part of this study when you and Ramani together, I think you all did this, right? Yeah, extracted. Right, so I extracted from one of your name was also there in that. So of the women who are working, I mean, you see what kind of activities they are getting involved. So unemployed 3%, this was done some time back. Public sector you have 7%, then private formal sector, in corporates and all of that, 8%. Private informal employees 4%, so that maybe, I don't know whether it's correct. Right, then you have own account workers and then contributing family workers, which again may not be getting captured fully. So this is the situation, right? And this is another thing that we all know, and this is a very recent one, which I picked from Professor Malik Ranasinghe when he presented at the PIM in Professor Udita Liyanaga's memorial lecture. So he was talking about this figure, like, now the situation is women are, now even when we were coming, we saw University of Gayani is having the graduation, so many women are there, right? So you see in the universities now, you have more women doing mostly almost all these disciplines except for few, engineering, technology, computer science. I mean, I did engineering, but I remember in my batch we had 22 girls out of 250. So like that, but even now situation is the same. So apart from engineering, technology and computer science, most of the other professions you see more women, right? But if you have 64% women coming out of universities, that again a smaller number who gets into the universities, and why are they not getting into the world of work? We need to understand that. There is some problem with women also. So we need to understand how to educate them. One thing maybe they are old by the time they get into the universities, and then the moment you come out of it, you think of marriage. But nowadays, a new generation, it is not the case. So they also don't want to get married immediately. So there are lots of things. I mean, although we have highlighted few things from various research reports, there are a lot of things which we need to constantly look at because of the generational change as well. So we need to understand that sometimes our generation, what we thought may not be the real reason why things are changing. And you have a lot of informal sector, gig workers, part-time, 2-3 jobs that people do, which may not be getting captured into our statistics. And, so this in different sectors, if you really look at certain industries, by maybe because of societal pressures, parental pressures, you always feel normal, traditional jobs that you anyway push your children to do. Therefore, the areas that we have opportunities, plus women can contribute, you may not see that. So I mean, there is also a saying that if you educate a man, no disrespect to any of the men here, but this is what is said. Only an individual gets educated. If a woman is getting educated, then they will, spend the money back to the family, and you get educate a nation, they say, right? So this is the reason. So the women also have a huge role to play there. How do you overcome your inner inhibitions and say, without traditionally, stereotypically thinking that my life is looking after kids and all of that. But yes, that is a priority, but how do we really look at the rest of the thing for you? So another important aspect that we need to look at is the women in entrepreneurship. That again is a sad story because women, if you look at the total SME population in the country, 75% of it is SMEs, and out of that, 25% are women-owned SMEs, right? But the main struggle that most of these women are is for them, they are happy with what they do. They don't want to, upgrade themselves from micro to small to medium, and then go up to the higher level. So there are a lot of, maybe that is one thing, is their own inhibitions, plus they have there are ecosystem challenges as well. So there was an IFC a study that was done. I mean, it's very clear here. So the access to credit is a big issue, right? And women sometimes would like to go to polymudalalis kind of thing, informal sector, than going into a bank. And one thing, maybe they don't have collateral, and there are many other issues. Maybe husbands don't want you to go there, but there are many challenges. So again, more research has to be done to really understand what is in their psyche. But Women's Chamber of Commerce with CIPE, Center for International Private Enterprises, did a study on that with why banks are not lending to women. So that report will be out very soon to the public. So anyway, you see here the volume, the requirement is 2.1 billion, volume that is available, but the requirement is far higher. So everybody is fighting for that small piece of cake, right? So then how would women? So women will then go to the all these polymudalalis. So that's what will happen. So this is a challenge. So unless we get more women, if they're not willing to come to the formal employment sector, how can they really start something on their own? Then you have your own freedom and start in the comfort of your home, so whatever. So we need to look at that. So quickly, my time is slowly finishing also. How much time I have? Okay, right, I have time. Okay, so this is the most important part. So what are the challenges that women face in economic participation and getting involved in economic development? So again, not many people are joining the world of workforce. So that's a major issue, right? We all know that, why. Many reasons are there. And also, we also see not many politicians, because for us to have real policies and legislation that is conducive for the women, then we need to, the people in the parliament women in the parliament must talk about this. And that should be a priority for them. So women's agenda is not a priority for them anymore. So then how do we really get at least your own people? Sometimes our own women also don't talk about it. So that's another challenge. So how do we really get that top of the agenda for them as well? So if you have more, we hope that something good will happen, and at least they will be concerned. And then we also see public sector fairly bit organized, but then in the private sector, there aren't very many women in the leadership position. So that's a challenge. So when you don't have many, and especially I always say there is a sticky floor, not many women getting into the world of work, and there's a leaking pipeline also. When they get pregnant or get married, then there will be, dropouts. And then we find it difficult to go up the career ladder and, break this elusive glass ceiling. So therefore, if you don't have women at the top, there are no role models to look at. So there you don't get inspired, and also you don't feel like getting into that environment because you don't feel that the men understand whatever that you want. So that's again traditional way of looking at it. But if you're not bold enough, and especially rural women and those who are not very the parents are, because of parental pressure and all of that, then that will not happen. And then we also have very archaic labor laws, which does not support progress of women. In fact, it is sad that Shan is not there today, but the current labor minister has taken a lot of steps to really collect a lot of suggestions from various stakeholders, and I myself and Shiranti were part of that, giving suggestions as to what needs to be changed. And proactively they are giving a patient hearing to all the stakeholders, and it's immediately available in YouTube, so that anyone will know openly what it is, and that's what is required. But unfortunately, I was told, I don't know whether it is true, National Labour Advisory Committee, which is where all the decisions and all have taken before you put it to the parliament, only males there, not a single woman there. So that's another thing. If that is the case, if he was there, I would have asked him to make a note of that as well, because you have a lot of union leaders and all of that. So you don't understand the pain points that we have in the world of work, so that you will not be able to fix the issues that we are currently having. Right. So then I will go a bit. I am not going to talk about all issues here because of the interest of time, but I'll pick few things that are important, so that we can discuss and debate about it. Then we also have a lot of infrastructure issues. I mean, even if a woman wants to come join the world of work or start a business, if you have small kids, young kids, then you have problems, because you have no place to, unless you have support from your parents, you don't have creches, safe places to keep your kids and all of that. That's a big challenge. I know some time ago government invested in, I think, 2,000 odd creches around the country, but I don't know whether it is fully enforced. I have no visibility on that. There again, implementation happens, but nobody knows what has happened. That's another thing. So we need to have a central repository. Maybe Gayani Korea Foundation can be such a place where whatever we do, we actually have everything in a database, so that if somebody asks, it's a go-to place, right? So because nobody is doing it, at least if we take the initiative to do that, that will be really useful, right? So again, quality of the creches is very important, because nobody would like to keep the child if you're unsure of the place. I know some of the multinational companies, some women decided to come to work because they had a safe place to keep the kids in the office. They had a creche, and they could check from the phone. You don't need to go there. Even from the phone, you can check. So a lot of private sector companies have really invested in that, but you can't expect the private sector to invest. It's a huge cost, but can public-private partnership get in together to do that? That will really help us. And then also now with COVID, it was a blessing in disguise. Flexible working arrangements, by default we had to follow. So flexible arrangements are not there, but now again companies are going back to physical operations. Even Zoom company also announced last few days back that they want everybody to come to work. Hypocrites. They are the people who promoted Zoom and asked people to do virtual way of working, and now they want everybody to come back. So we have to devise and we have to identify ways and means to track the productivity of people. It's not the number of hours you spend, the quality of output. There should be means to identify how to do that, right? Again, we see the gender-based discrimination harassment, although we are, by constitution, everybody should be equal, but it is not the case. Even in the advertisements I have seen in the government sector sometimes, in the railway sector, in the rail, one of the advertisements, female, it's only for males. Although government themselves are saying this some time ago. And in my sector now, I'm in supply chain and logistics. In the port, there is a unwritten understanding that women should not be working in the operational area after 6 o'clock. So therefore, even if women want to work in the port, they can't. But however, 6 years ago, they recruited 20 odd female gantry crane operators, and few of them dropped out, and now for the last 4 years, we have 10 female gantry crane operators. They have really improved the productivity of men in a good way, because men are now properly dressed. Earlier they were just bare-bodied, they're running around, So now they are maintaining, the productivity has improved. And when I spoke to these ladies and some of the officers, that's what they were saying. So of course they don't do still there are challenges, and still the structure, the system doesn't allow them to go up the career ladder. But at least the little step that they have taken, despite all these unwritten things that we have. Right. So in public transport, again, another problem. I think UNFP did a study some time back, said 90% of the women are getting harassed in the bus. So no wonder women don't want to come to work, because if you want to send the child to tuition or school in a bus, you don't want to risk that, and therefore you accompany the child. If you're not, you can't afford, you don't have a vehicle, all that. So those are challenges we need to do. The answer to that is not to have a female-only bus or a female-only carriage. That's not the case. We need to correct the situation in the society. I think that's what we need to do. It's going to be a long drawn-out affair, but we need to look at that. Then, we also have this low socioeconomic status and poverty. So especially in those strata of the population, they also have their own challenges, and also their beliefs, and they also feel that certain jobs that women should not do. Even in the other sectors, we have the same issue. And perceptions are there that women should not be working in certain sectors, and they should be engaged in feminine related work as well. And gender wage gap is there, prevalent in private sector. I don't know to what extent, but I have heard from people. Then I worked in multinational, so in multinational companies we don't have it, but maybe in other companies there may be. And we have cultural barriers again, and societal pressures. And I've seen recently that some of the company advertisements earlier, even in our textbooks, mother cooks, father goes to the farm, or go to the fields. And then obviously from the childhood days, you think that mother's place is in the kitchen, father's only goes out. So like that. So now I think we need to do that. If we are saying that by constitution it is the case. From the education level, from the childhood years, we need to start doing that. Plus in the advertisements also, I've seen in some companies now, men and women both are sharing household chores in the advertisements. I should not mention a brand name, but that company now advertising like that, in the kitchen pantry, husband and wife both are using that. So subtly you can do these things so that the society will accept that man doing something is okay, because cooking and cleaning is not a gender-based skill, it's a life skill. So from school days in Spain and some other countries, they teach kids to cook and all of that. So why can't we do that? So it's not something that a woman only can do, so that actually prevents women coming into the world of work. Okay, so there are many issues. So women-led SMEs are not much. There are many issues that we have. So I'll just pick few things. And we know that, all that is because why women are not coming to the world of work is they are getting involved in unpaid care work, looking after kids, looking after aged parents, and all of that. And therefore, so how can you do a job and then go home, and the number of minutes per day that you use is quite double the amount of time that the man spends. And developed versus developed countries also, there's a huge difference like that, right? So you see this anomaly in the system. So the system doesn't permit women to, then they are tired, and they are, especially now in COVID and the working from home, it's additional pressure. Because everybody's at home, you have to work, you have to cook, do everything. So these are challenges when companies will have to look at. So again, I just thought rather than talking all issue paper stuff, but I also thought of talking about this. Now domestic chores should be done by robots, they say, like in 40. I don't know whether we'll have the funds to look at this, but Roomba, if you want to clean the house, you don't need somebody to do that. You can get a Roomba to do that cleaning part. So maybe technology is helping women to get out of these household chores if you can afford it. Maybe if it's affordable to many people, like the Indians reverse engineering and doing things, maybe we can have such products available so that you can reduce your time that you spend on doing household work. Okay, so quickly I'll talk about the labor reforms, what we really need. So that's a huge step that we need to take. So I'm happy that currently they're already working on this. I wish Sean was here. He would have been able to tell us what it is. So we all know that we have this maternity benefit ordinance, maternity benefits, there are anomalies there. We have Shop and Office Flow Act. I don't need to read out everything. So these anomalies have to be removed. We need to understand what needs to be done. And also, as ILO Convention 183, as per the convention, 12 weeks of paid leave are due after childbirth, irrespective of the number of children. So all of that. So therefore, we need to look at this formal and informal sector both. And we need to really look at, and employers are actually liable to pay maternity benefits. And ILO advocates shared responsibility of the government by introducing a maternity benefit insurance scheme. So what do we propose? We want to streamline the two pieces, the maternity benefit ordinance and Shop and Office Flow Act, so that both sectors will be on the same level playing field, and then set up an insurance fund to share the cost of maternity benefits between government and employees in line with the ILO convention. Because then employers will, at least supportive of engaging more women. There are capable women, but still that is the first thing that come to most of their mind. There are conscious and unconscious biases. Prevents you from recruiting a woman, even the woman is more capable or equally capable than the man, or even better than them. And of course, this aspect, because of COVID, things change. And here, the rights and benefits related to part-time, flexi hours, and virtual work arrangements that we need to really look at. Because especially now with digitalization, technology available, now most women like to work from home. And post-COVID especially, it was the case, virtual working. So there are certain things, unless you are in the front-end kind of work, in a factory environment, office environment, if you promote that, maybe some percentage of the women who want to come back to work or who are contemplating, will be having an opportunity to get into the world of work. So currently no law applies to part-time and flexi hours working arrangements. So how do we really bring that to the law? So this was also proposed, and therefore we need to really look at clear guidelines for the gratuity liability. Amendments need to be introduced to define clearly the rights and benefits of all new type of work arrangements. Then night work and related obstacles, especially for ICT and BPO industry. You cannot say after after 6 o'clock you cannot work, because you have to work in different time zones, you are working for other countries. So I was told that this is being taken, but I don't know whether it has gone into legislation yet. So here we should not have gone, right? Okay, right. So it's still, again, visibility wasn't there, but somebody was telling me that it is there, and that needs to be looked at. And therefore, the scope of the term industrial undertaking in the Shop and Office Act needs to be broadened to make way for that. And one of the important things is the education reforms. We know the struggle that the kids go through, 13 years of education, but then the waiting time, even now, A-level papers are not marked, unions go on strike. And even now, within the same country, the government sector and the private sector, there's a 2-year gap. They are ahead of them. So very soon, it will be a social problem. No private sector employee will recruit anybody from the government sector because you're lagging behind, and also because of other reasons. So it's a sad situation. So we need to quickly do something about it, and we need to really minimize those delays. And also, one reason women don't want to join the world of work is because you need to take the kids to school. Far better for them to do a job, look after them, than spending so much money on the clothing and the transport and all of that. So therefore, if we have proper public transport, safe bus or school vans, whatever system in place, high quality, and if also some of them also have said, like, if you can, school starting ending time is in line with the office working time, longer hours you spend, so that the number of years you spend is less. But of course, with this tuition culture in this country, the quality of education has to improve first. And from primary to secondary, the whole education structure has to be revamped. A lot of reforms are happening. Every successive governments, when they come to power, they talk about it. But I really don't know what we are really doing. Every time they want to change, can we have a strong policy which doesn't change every time government changes? So that we need to really understand. And we all know this discrimination and harassment. So most employees feel maternity is considered a cost to the company. It is not the case. That's why we are suggesting the insurance fund, so that it will help women's chances of getting into the world of work. And gender pay gap in private sector, if there are any, how do we really do that? You need to really look at, and you need to really understand pay for the capability, not based on the gender. And also, the concept of house husband is not prevalent. So very often, women only sacrifices. Even if you're capable, you have the opportunity to work. Sometimes you take the burden of looking after the kids or staying at home, even if you really want to, be part of the world of work. So the societal pressures are there. I know few of my friends' husband, when they are at home overseas and all of that, they're asking, why are you doing that? Why can't your wife stay at home and you can do that? So it's a kind of a taboo thing, right? So how do we change our mindset, look at that? And guys should not tease those friends, who are house husbands, if they are, right? And of course, the challenges at workplace and during transport. So do we have policies to look after, tackle these gender-based violences, right? And society sensitization are some other things that we are proposing that can be done. So finally, world is changing at a rapid pace, and technology is really helping women also to come to the world of work, because digitalization is a great equalizer for women. So I feel when our ChatGPT, we are all talking about ChatGPT, that was actually the CTO was a woman, and also the world's first robot who got the citizenship or passport in Saudi Arabia is also a woman, Sophia, right? So in this kind of a context we are in, why are we not making use of this technological advantage for our own thing? I mean, you don't need to have sophisticated technology, but how do you really make, appropriate technology, what is suitable for us, so that we can make our women, be more meaningfully engaged in the world of work, and also they can go up the career ladder and contribute to the economy and for their families as well. So with that, I will conclude my session. I hope I was within the time frame. I just go on a little bit more. So basically the concluding remarks are, what I'm saying is these are the things that we need to look at in summary. So we need to look at the national policy and labor law reforms. We need to, in private sector, corporate HR policy and best practices. We need to share with each other because not everybody may not be at the same page. So we need to have a repository or share information. And we need to also incentivize the private sector to hire more females because there are challenges because of other infrastructure issues. Educational reforms is a must. And improve infrastructure which will enable more women to safely use transport, be in the workplace, and the kids as well. And of course, finally, the most important thing is when we open the TV for news, you see all the negative things and killings and the deaths and all of that. Why can't we really do things which will promote not only women about positive things which we can take this country to a different level? And social sensitization is something that we need to really work on it. So the companies who are promoting things in media plus the media stations also, they all have a role to play in sensitizing the society. So without that, all of us are still, carrying this year after year and continue the way that we are doing. So like Einstein said, if you want to, get a positive outcome, you can't do the same thing over and over again. Then you'll be insane otherwise. So therefore, if you want to change and we want more women to contribute to the economy, then we need to really look at things in a different way, in a positive approach. So I'm thankful to Gayani Korea Foundation for including this issue paper on women and development because it will open all our eyes and really look at what is it that as women can do to contribute to the economy, because already we are doing, but it's not getting noticed. But how do we really meaningfully make a contribution? And we feel good about it. There's dignity of labor and what are the things that we do, so that will help us. So thank you very much. Over to the panel.
Thank you, Gayani, for a very insightful and informative and very detailed and clear presentation. First of all, I would like to convey our heartfelt gratitude to the Gayani Korea Foundation for dedicating a topic for women and development in this public policy dialogue. And we are here today, and Gayani, congratulations on delivering a very outstanding piece, and I also must recognize the presence of Professor Ajit in the audience, who is also a tremendous support. This is not his first support. He's certainly not a house husband, but it certainly helps when your partner supports your cause, and I'm sure this won't be the last. And just as a recognition of men behind women who are promoting this cause, and that whether it's men, women, or on any other non-binary gender, when we stand up for a cause, it's important that all of us get together. So public policy dialogue, beyond conversations, I think it is our fervent hope and intention that it moves into some results, actions, and outcomes, and that is why we are here today. And even in order to steer the conversation into action for new laws, new policies, and new culture, I will just touch upon a few key points coming out of Gayani's speech, action-oriented points, because many of us here in this audience today have been working in this area with a lot of passion, commitment, and dedication. When our women are migrating for unscheduled employment, why cannot we become known to export skilled quality labor, whether they are men or women? Rather than complain about the talent and brain drain, become an export hub for skilled talent and be known in the regions and globally. That's one option. In apparel, one of my colleagues, Eranthi, is here. She's an expert in ILO now, but formerly in the apparel sector. Women in positions of management and leadership, as well as in the assembly lines. Plantation, again, we know there's a lot of unspoken social issues, women and alcoholism, less spoken of social problems. Can we retrain some of these people? Can we give them higher social benefits, support, and education to uplift their standards, because they are essentially contributors to the economy? In terms of decent work and dignity of labor, I'm sure Arianthi from ILO will touch on this. But significantly in the wellness industry. Everyone says there are spas exponentially opening all over the Western province, but rather than call it spas or massage parlors, look at it, give it dignity. It's wellness industry. There's a demand and a supply. Give these service providers dignity and give them a decent work, and provide safety nets around them so that they are safeguarded and they get self-worth and respect. Same way with entertainment industry. I think in the Ministry of Labour dialogue also I brought this out. Rather than call a female in very derogatory terms like Kal or Badu or Telinatya Kal, give these talented individuals, talented, beautiful individuals, dignity of labor for decent work and safety nets and safeguards. They are talented professionals, so let us treat them with professionals. Women in legislature to improve from 5% to beyond. Again, dignity of labor and a conducive environment where women are regarded as contributors and not looked at through a lens of gender. So women in access to finance. As a banker, lastly I want to touch the point, there's a real need for gender disaggregated data, gender-based taxation. I think next week the UNDP is having a dialogue on that. But women in finance and in entrepreneurship, rather than disenfranchise them or populate them into a mass set of data and fight for quotas and pink products, there's so much more we can do and push the conversation forward into real action. So with that, let me introduce to you briefly our very prominent panel today, starting from the corner, Gayani, as you already know. Then we have Dr. Roshan Pereira, Senior Economist for Advocata, Eranthi Premaratna, Consultant for International Labour Organization, and Dr. Nisha Arunathilaka, Director of Research for Institute of Policy Studies. Unfortunately, Shan Yahampath, Advisor to the Ministry of Labour, is not here today. I would like to open our dialogue today by posing a question to Nisha. In the issues paper, Gayani highlights that female labour force participation has significantly reduced by 500 basis points from 39% to 34%. As a researcher who has been invested into this area, can you identify the topmost reasons?
Thank you, Shiranti, and thank you for inviting me to this forum. So it's actually a normal thing when the countries are not doing well economically, when the per capita incomes are low, the families don't have a lot of money, so women also participate in the labor force because they need to do that to keep the family fires going. But what is particular, if you remember Gayani's graph, it's going down all the way. What you find is in other countries, with development, now in Sri Lanka per capita incomes have been increasing, and with the access to education increasing and the fertility levels going down, usually it picks up because there are good opportunities. So because your opportunity cost of not participating, it goes down and then it goes up because there are better opportunities. But in Sri Lanka that has not happened. So that is a curiosity that we need to find out. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons for that, and that is why I think that's what we are discussing today. But I was, when you posed that question, actually I was concentrating in the last few years because we've been going through a series of crises. And what you find is actually the labor force participation rates, that is the share of people who are engaged in the labor force of the working age population, it has dropped by the same percentage points for males and females. But what is particular is that the unemployment rates for women are almost twice that for the males. So that means, when there are, the job opportunities are less now because the economy has contracted. It was negative 8.7% in 2021, 2022, and so looks to be the men are crowding out women. And what is particular is for more educated women, that is those with A-level and over, the unemployment rate is 12.2%. So when I also witnessed this graduation ceremony, that means 1 in 8 of them will be unemployed in the foreseeable future, of these people who are well educated. So that is a cost to the country, because as you know, we have a free education. We give free education, so the country invests a lot in education. But if you are not making use of those who are educated, that is we are not getting returns to our investment. So that's a big problem. So as Gayani also showed, actually we have more educated women now than men. So there is more opportunity there, but obviously we are not looking at that. So you also mentioned decent work. Now ILO has been talking about it a lot. So decent work is actually work that is non-vulnerable. That means that they are resilient. They, like what we experience with the economic crisis, when there is a shock to the economy, you don't lose your job because they provide social protection, and actually that helps the economy to pick up faster because your aggregate demand doesn't go down because you are not, having money and you can't buy anything, so the economy goes down. So the need now is actually to create decent jobs. But if you look at all these budget speeches, that you always find that there is something about women that they want to promote labor force participation. But it is always by either giving microfinance so that they can start self-employment, or providing jobs in the public sector. So we know that now with the economic crisis, and it's not possible for the public sector to expand anymore. So only opportunity is in microfinance, in promoting them to do self-employment. But if you look at it, a lot of these women are in rural areas where everybody in the village is in the same boat. They don't have a lot of money to buy things. So they start a little shop. Who is going to come and buy anything from there? It's not going to be sustainable. It's very vulnerable. So you need to find jobs which are linked to bigger markets, like the urban centers or the international export markets, where you have better demand, so you have a market for your goods. So that is where we need, that's where maybe your husband can come in about innovation. You have to come up with innovation, because now with ICT and things like that, you can link these rural production units to urban markets and global markets, because just giving women a bit of money to start a little shop or microfinance project is not going to get them anywhere, because if you are targeting that local market, it's not, it is not, you can say from the beginning that it's not going to be successful. So decent work is about being able to earn sufficient income, doing work, normal hours, so not excessively working, overtime and all that to make that minimum wage. But also having the social protection, you are protected when you are not well, you get still paid, so all of that. So I was looking at these jobs in Sri Lanka. Where are these jobs coming from? So, that's a good area. We want to, now about a little bit more than a quarter of the jobs are in agriculture. And agriculture, 92% of the jobs are in the informal sector, and the workers there get less than half the average wage. So those are not good jobs. So we want to go beyond that. Now we saw in the 1980s and the 90s, there were a lot of these garment factories started up and the manufacturing sector. It is a little better than the agriculture, but there is no future there actually. That industry sector is shrinking. And also there is new phenomenon now, the developed countries where we send these products to, they are using robots to produce these things. So there is no advantage for this low wage. So that is also not, the future is not there. So we have to find other areas where you can find these big jobs. So if you look at the labor market, you have actually very high wages in the information communication technology jobs, and also finance and insurance. So that is more than twice the average wages. And they are also mostly formal sector jobs. But the problem is the number of jobs. So I just looked at some of the numbers. Only 0.9% of the jobs in Sri Lanka are ICT jobs. And less than 2% of the jobs in Sri Lanka are in the finance sector. So these are the areas I think we need to think about expanding, investing in, rather than in providing microfinance to women, where there are opportunities, and then also linking people. We are talking about sometimes value chains, enabling them to sell their products in a market where they can earn a sufficient wage that will take them beyond the average wages. So that is where the need is. I think I got 10 minutes, so I will stop there. So just want to emphasize the fact that we need to push for not just participation in any job. It's very important that it is a decent job which pays adequately, which provides social protection and all of that. And so we need to, that's where we need to get the government to be thinking about also when they are coming up with policies, to think through, what kind of opportunities are given to women.
Thank you, Nisha. And I think that the last bit about ICT jobs completely is connected to women in STEM jobs and STEM professions. Just today, I think these 3 days there's a construct exhibition, and the minister was saying while all the other sectors eroded by about 10 to 15%, the construction industry fell by nearly 40%. And we must understand that these are engineers, quantity surveyors, draftsmen, all largely free education products, and a lot of these people are migrating. So naturally, when the country is ready to rebuild, we will have talent scarcity. And how many women are there? I may be ignorant, but out of my ignorance, I'll say probably I would be able to recall at the leading level Professor Chitra Vedikara, but how many other women can we name in such an industry? Similarly, ICT we hear more, we know more, but in every other industry in STEM job, we need to make sure women are present right across the ranks, among the rank and file and the top leadership, and these have to become a part and parcel of our dialogue. So before I move on to Eranthi, just touching on a point, and I'd like to bring this whole unpaid work element touched by Eranthi as well, because she's the ILO expert, house husbands. I think it's a pleasure to be living in times where we can see, witness, and hear about some of our own friends and known persons who are proudly being house husbands. I don't think when we grew up that was probably heard of, unless your dad got into the strike in 1982 and lost the job and was at home out of sheer circumstance or something. But typically growing thing, and I think more and more Sri Lankan men are taking into child minding, washing, feeding, and that is to be recognized and looked up. So there's a lot of community sensitization and awareness to be done. I think I'm counting on Eranthi to touch a lot of these things in her address. But the question that I'm posing to you is, Sri Lanka as a nation has ratified most ILO conventions. Despite same, we see that female labor force participation keeps steadily decreasing. From an ILO perspective, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Chiranti. Let me congratulate Gayani for a very interesting discussion that you led. It was a 45-minute presentation, but I certainly didn't feel the time go by because you presented it in a very interesting and a very personalized manner. Thanks, Chiranti, for the question. So in terms of the instruments Sri Lanka has ratified, there are 43 ILO conventions and one protocol that Sri Lanka has ratified. And out of the 10 core or fundamental conventions, Sri Lanka has ratified 8. So, that's kind of encouraging. And I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that there are 3 very important, or rather 2 very important conventions. One is on Equal Remuneration Convention number 100. The second one being Discrimination in Employment and Occupation Convention number 111, which are very relevant to the discussion today, both of which Sri Lanka has actually ratified. And then there are 3 others relating to women that Sri Lanka has ratified. One relating to night work and women, another one relating to maternity benefits and women, and the third one, which probably most of us have not heard of, is women and underground work. So Sri Lanka has actually ratified all of those as well. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka is yet to ratify C-190, a convention that has that was released by the International Labour Organization in 2019, a very important convention relating to violence and harassment. So that's something I think we as a group may even could lead some lobbying of the Sri Lankan government to ratify. So in terms of Sri Lankan labour force participation, we saw some statistics there, just to draw your memory back. As per the, we all know, we saw the graph, there's a huge decline, that's what we've been talking about. So in 2010, as per the World Bank statistics, 41% of women have been participating in the labour force and 36% in 2016. And as per the latest Department of Census and Statistics statistics for Q1 2022, which is the latest that's available, the numbers have further declined to 33.6%, right? So these are numbers, we discussed about all of that. And what we need to think of are, as Gayani mentioned, there are two reasons. So there are extrinsic factors and then there are intrinsic factors. In terms of extrinsic factors, there are 3 main areas we can talk about. One is on the state. The second one is about the organization, and third is about societal roles, the role society plays, and a woman's responsibility to the society. So if you look at the state's responsibility in getting more women into the labor force, I would say, firstly, we have to look at legal protection. So, Gayani, you talked a little bit about the laws, right? So, yes, there are laws that specifically prescribe protection, items relating to providing protection for women against exploitation. For example, laws relating to night work, laws relating to overtime work, laws relating to maternity benefits, so all of that. But what we also need to keep in mind is that these laws, while on the one hand provide protectionism from exploitation of women, on the other hand, these laws also tend to result in discrimination for women, right? It's a double-edged sword, actually. Because when there are additional restrictions on women, they lose out getting experience, exposure, and being able to work in par with their male counterparts. So in terms of all of this, there are restrictions on the women, and that kind of stunts their growth in the workplace. So then also we lack certain laws completely. For example, on certain occupational health and safety, etc. There's inadequate laws to protect or govern certain conditions relating to women. And I already mentioned that Sri Lanka is yet to ratify C-190. So stemming from that, the current laws on sexual harassment, workplace bullying, etc., harassment and workplace bullying in Sri Lanka is quite limited. There is there's very basic laws, but there are so many complications, and laws are not adequate. And even, of course, there's a whole cultural system as well that needs to be built to support if a woman is to seek any protection from the law. That's another discussion altogether, right? So that's about the laws that the government should look into. And secondly, another area that the government should look into is, of course, providing policies to support all of these. And the third one is on infrastructure. So Gayani already mentioned a little bit on this, but something that we have been promoting for a long time as a private sector, when I used to work in the private sector, was about safe transport. Because, when women are to end their shifts late at night or evenings to be able to get safe transport back home, and even accommodation. There's a lot of women who migrate from rural areas to the industrial zones, and they really struggle with accommodation, right? So if the government can either provide or incentivize companies, because there's a lot that private sector is doing. So if the government can further incentivize some of these, private sector organizations to provide these kinds of facilities to the females who come to work in these, like Nisha just mentioned, it's not only about the manufacturing sector or the low-paid jobs, but at all levels. So moving on to organizations. So from an organizational perspective, we all join an organization for a number of reasons, but we also look forward to being compensated for the work that we do adequately and receive benefits. And we also, as a fundamental expectation, we expect to have to be able to work in a safe working place, working environment, safe both physically as well as from any harassment, workplace bullying, etc. So I would like to draw your attention to some statistics. As per an IFC report, IFC research that was conducted in 2021, 3 in 5 employees have faced workplace bullying and sexual harassment. This is both men and women, including online violence. And we saw a huge growth in, or increase in online violence during the last few years with the onset of the pandemic. So, and there's inadequate laws governing this and, inadequate systems supporting this as well. So these are some of the things I think we need to take cognizance of as the foundation here and see what we can do. There's a huge business case as well as to why we should look into this. So apparently, according to this particular research, 6 days of work annually is lost due to this kind of workplace bullying and harassment, which also has been estimated to be a loss of $1.7 million annually. And in this current global, economic crisis that we are facing, these are numbers that will add into, our economic crisis, right? So in addition to that, let me now also speak a little bit about formal institutional barriers that have been established by law, which we already spoke about a little bit, but also informal institutional barriers that have been, created by social norms. So these obviously limit females from moving, will limit females into certain jobs. Like, for example, in the private sector, there are females who work in the apparel sector and females who work in the plantation, right? But even in these, they do not go into the high-paid jobs. They kind of remain in the lower ranks of these organizations, and that's a huge issue because, women in leadership is a subject that we have been all talking about for a long time in Sri Lanka. Very slow progress is being made. There are some companies who are setting numbers, measurable goals, and actively supporting to achieve these numbers, because when women are not adequately represented in the leadership positions, parliament, but also in organizations, women's issues are not adequately addressed and discussed. And another item I think Gayani mentioned about role models. There are no role models for others to look up to, right? So that's another concern. So as per, again, let me I also do some work with the International Finance Corporation, so some statistics from there again. So as per research that was conducted recently by the International Finance Corporation, women in boards in Sri Lanka stands at 9.5%. There has been a growth. So in 2018, 144 women in boards enlisted in the Colombo Stock Exchange, which has grown to 221 in 2020. So there is, progress, positive, progress being made, however, not adequate. The third factor that I talked about in terms of, extrinsic factors of women being held back. household roles that women have to play. So with women being sort of forced to, I mean, I have 2 young kids, and there's a lot of work. I mean, one of the reasons I left the formal sector and started working as a consultant is because I needed some sort of flexibility, right? And this is something that a lot of women personally have to go through. So, and there are some real struggles, and we need to figure out the best ways in which we can address these. And also when women are women are required to take time off, they get less exposure in their organizations. They get less time being trained. They get less exposure traveling, etc., which obviously stunt their growth in the organization, right? So so these are some of the things that I wanted to talk about, and this is an action-oriented forum, so quite a bit that we can do. We've been talking a lot at various fora. I myself have been involved in a number of national discussions as well, but like Gayani mentioned, actual action that comes out of them have been quite limited. So if we can at least pick a few things that we can do, or look at or prioritize certain things that will affect or make a huge impact relatively, that I think is where we need to go. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Eranthi, and that was very clear and informative, and especially the ILO perspective. Yes, action-orientedness is what is important. In 2018, a few of us got together with another wider group of people, academics, business leaders, researchers, under the NHRDC and the Prime Minister's Policy Unit to prepare a strategic roadmap to increase female labor force participation in Sri Lanka. Since 2017, we have been speaking the same thing. I think consistency in what we talk about and repeat and go on and on and on and on. We hear ourselves like we know this like the back of our palms. And when I see the slides, we all know it in and out. But that has resulted in labor law reforms. That has given some traction. It's not as fast as we would like to, but we've got somewhere. That's one point I want to make. Another observation is you see 5 females in front of you. This is not women talking for women and on behalf of women. Unfortunately, the one man, and quite a phenomenal man at that, Shan Yahampat, advisor to the Labour Minister, was to be here today. He is held back. But I want to, on his behalf, say, it was a very pleasant experience to go to the Ministry of Labour auditorium and experience a digitally enabled participative dialogue on labour law reforms. We come from private sector, we come from big institutions. We go for a meeting and the minutes come 1 week, 2 weeks. Sometimes the minutes are hastily distributed at the next meeting. No action trackers, nothing. That day they used a audio-video system called, and it was called Influx or some branded. As we spoke, it got uploaded within 24 hours into YouTube. So its recordings are there, the minutes are there, you see it. You could not just go talk shop and forget. And kudos to the government. There was a lot of, I'm not here to, praise any political party or anything, but we must recognize and appreciate good things being done. Government taking an initiative in digitalization, since we are here with the innovators, was a very good thing. And it was a lesson for us. It put us to shame. And the other thing is, some people were saying whether the optics really matter. But actually, if the people concerned, if a cabinet minister can come and spend 4 hours every week and be there, not use the phone, listen, engage, that also speaks of something. One can say it's optics, one can say it's anything. But at the end of the day, today we have a draft, act in hand. So it was speedy, it was expeditious, and that was good. Maybe there are lessons for us to take, the good things that others do. So from Shan, I was going to actually highlight this. and ask about challenges. Since he's not there, I thought it is my duty to showcase and share something good that was being done somewhere where we can all take a lesson. Now I turn on to Roshan, a very senior advocate from Advocata. Advocata is a very, I would say, a very revolutionary and very innovative institute once again, who always take very contemporary topics to talk about. So thank you for being here with us today, and I'll pose my question to you. What are the opportunities you see for Sri Lanka to make economic and social progress in the Women and Development Agenda?
Thank you, Shanti, for that. But first, let me thank the Gayani Korea Foundation for inviting me to be on this panel, and also congratulate Gayani on a very comprehensive paper. I think she's covered most areas, so I don't have a lot to say, and I think all the panelists also have covered many of the areas. And as Shanti said, I mean, Sri Lanka really needs to move the needle on many of these areas. But I want to focus on one area which I think has tremendous potential, but requires some very clear direction and policies to unleash that potential. And that is really on the digitalization. And I'm glad that Gayani ended her session on that, and you just highlighted this whole thing of digitalization, because I think that is one area we still are, we have not pushed enough. There's a lot of potential. So I just want to talk a little bit on that. Because I think when we talk about the labor force participation, we always talk about women in the labor force in terms of either the formal labor force as an employee rather than an employer, or being self-employed as an entrepreneur, more like an entrepreneur. So I think digitalization, or the whole digital economy, is one area which can really bring more women entrepreneurs. And we're seeing that already. We're seeing a lot of women entrepreneurs in this space. But I think, again, that's, in a very sort of small space, or a certain type of person. But I think that has to move across. And I think Nisha mentioned about, women doing the same thing or not having access to markets and things like that. I think digitization is one area through which you can do that. And that's the fantastic opportunity. But unfortunately, there are a lot of barriers to, expanding in this space. So I'll just touch on three barriers. The first is in terms of access. So I think we all faced, during the pandemic, the challenges we faced in terms of accessing internet, having, uninterrupted internet connectivity, in terms of speed of the internet. I mean, there were a lot of issues that we faced, and here we are talking about in Colombo, in a very small area where internet connectivity is fairly regular. But if you go out into the rural areas, there are many dark spots, many areas that are not covered with internet coverage. And even if they're covered, it's very poor and patchy. So in that sense, how do you expect this kind of digital economy to take off if we don't have enough, the infrastructure is not there, the digital infrastructure is not in place. So I think that is one area that we don't talk about a lot, but I think that is one area that we really need to start pushing. And that's not only for women. I think that is across the board. If we, as a country, I think that is, we have huge potential to grow the economy through through the digital economy. The other one is in terms of affordability. So if, the surveys that have been conducted by DCS on, access to devices, everybody has a a mobile phone and a mobile phone connection. But not all of these are smartphones that can access the internet and be able to be used for economic activity. So I think there, again, how do we bring down the cost of this? Because, again, it has to do with policies, because you have an exchange rate that fluctuates, or you have a huge depreciation of the exchange rate, and your devices become unaffordable. Then, of course, on the other hand, it's also not only access to devices, but it's also access to the internet. If you look at the latest data on internet connections, you'll see that there's huge decline in mobile phone data connections actually through SLT, and I guess the same is true for dialogue. And partly, I'm just saying that there's no research on this, or no one has actually done as to why. And I think that's a question that needs to be asked. Is it because of affordability? Because obviously that's discretionary expenditure. And as soon as you have to, choose between feeding a family and, getting food on the table and in your stomach versus, having a data connection, obviously, I mean, which one, there's no, there's obviously which one goes. So I think affordability is something that also needs to be addressed. And if you look at, yes, we look at the taxes on all these, on internet services, you can see there's a huge component of taxes. Yes, we need to collect taxes, but is this the way to collect taxes? Because are we shooting ourselves in the foot by, increasing taxes on these kind of services when the economic benefits may outweigh what you collect in terms of the tax? So I think these are some things that really need to be addressed and at a policy level, really. And the third one is, of course, on literacy. Because as I said, everybody might have access to a mobile phone. And when you look at the survey that is done by DCS, basically literacy is very high. It's like 80% or something. But what they mean by literacy there is whether you can do anything with the phone. So, I mean, you can send a text message or anything basically counts for digital literacy. But that is not sufficient if you want to actually bring people into the digital economy. There has to be much more in terms of, even to be able to send an email. I mean, those kind of skills are very low among most people. So I think there has to be some kind of real clear policy on developing the skills of people in terms of the use of digital devices for economic activity. I think a lot of people use it for social activity like Facebook or browsing the internet, but then to teach them that it has huge potential in terms of digital economy. And I think again to Nisha's point of you have all these women who may be in some village out there producing the same thing, but how do they connect to markets? This is one way in which you can bring them into the markets and connect them with other groups quite easily. And I think if you look at India, they have done it not only India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, many of the Asian countries have done it very successfully. So that is something that Sri Lanka, I don't think, has really looked at, and is looking at in terms of policy direction. But to do all this, basically, you need a lot of support from governments, from organizations, and also from the individual. So the thing about flexible work, you need to have, even if you're not an entrepreneur, but you're working with some company, if you can have this flexible work, they can do both. You can work part-time in a formal employment or as an employee, but the rest of the time you can do, so you supplement your income. So I think that flexible work is really essential to take this forward. Then of course, enhancing the digital skills, so STEM education, we know, I think those statistics were put there. In terms of females, in STEM education is very low. Forget the STEM education, I think even the math, I think recently there was this the survey, right, on numeracy skills is abysmal actually in this country. So if you don't have those skills, how can you actually expect people to even go into this? So I think we really need to think seriously, at least for the next generation, and build them up, build their skills up. And I think Vietnam is doing this. They have a formal system to, because they know that this is the future, getting into the digital economy. So I think that's one thing. And of course, somebody said about role models. Do we showcase those role models? Because there are women entrepreneurs in this digital space. But are they, showcased? Are they given the prominence? They are internationally recognized, actually. They're known internationally. But do we know them? And do we showcase them? And so that, other women also will realize that there is potential in this space. So I think that, and then also building these networks and connections. I think, we have all these sessions like this, but, how do we build these connections? Because we are always talking to the same people, right? The same people we're kind of preaching to the converted. How do you get this out there, get it out into the public domain and get people connected into these, because there are networks that are operating in this space, but how do you get others into that space? So I think that's another thing that we maybe in this this group, whether we can do that. And of course, to have a digital economy, you need, so this is where the government also needs to come in, because as I think Gayani very rightly, there is a responsibility for the role for the government, role for corporates, and role for individuals or society. And one thing that government has to do is the payment system. Because if you do not have a proper, a digital payment system, there is no way that you can grow a digital economy. Now if you look at even, I think there's a company that does digital, is in this digital space, and they did a survey with Slascom. Most of the sales were actually cash sales. So you can't, because of the trust factor, they were cash-based sales. Even though it was, online sales, they were all cash-based. And that is because of the trust factor. And also this, there is no sort of digital platform, an interoperable digital platform. If you look at India, everybody, even this little boutique, has a QR code, and you go there and to get simple things, you just use your QR code. Because there is interoperability and everybody uses it. And that comes from, this whole Aadhaar, that unique ID system where their accounts are linked to their bank accounts, etc. So that platform has to be there. Otherwise, there's no way that you can. So that's nothing to do with women per se, but I think in general, for the economy, we have to move forward in these things. Otherwise, we're not going to get very far. And then one more thing is on data collection. If you want to find data on this area and who's actually in that, it's very difficult, because even though census does some data collection, it's actually it's part of the labor force survey, really. So the kind of questions they ask are very simple questions. It's not depth. There's no depth in it. But if you're serious about this, moving this area, I think we really need to do some, surveys which are dedicated to this area, to elicit the information, and find out why we know, the one, but we need to know why people are not doing these various things. So I think data collection is really necessary. And finally, I think what everybody said is on policy making. You find that, most policy makers, we know the percentage of women in parliament. I think there are only 12 or 13 women in that 225. There are only 12 or 13. But that representation flows down into the ministries as well, at very senior levels. And definitely the corporate sector is very poorly represented. Actually, government is probably better represented than the corporate sector. So I think at the policy making level, we need to get more females so that we can actually move on some of these issues. So that's what I'll say. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Roshan. Without waiting to give a summary in between, Gayani, you presented a paper, and there were experts giving commentaries, linking and drawing out points from that. I had already a question for you. What are the levels of governance, and what specific actions in governance will promote and sustain the Women and Development Agenda? But to simplify it, what would you want done now?
I think it was really interesting. I think you all built on and brought in new thinking, and some of the things even I haven't thought about it. I think that was really good. I mean, especially in terms of decent workspace. Okay, yes, it is known, but have I thought about it? Is something that we can build in. So I think the first thing is we need to get into action. That's my first thing. So we need to pick some low-hanging fruits. I mean, we need to prioritize. I think Gayani Korea Foundation can really help us. I think all of you as resource personally, I think you all have wealth of knowledge and information, and a lot of audience, some of these ladies who are there already, they have specialized in this topic. I think we need to form a kind of group of women together and identify the priority areas to work on. And let's show that it is possible. Let's pick those quick wins. I mean, already labor reforms are happening because of various pressures and, pushing happening. But I mean, what can we do? Okay, that while that is happening, what can we do from these recommendations? And maybe I'll update some of the learnings from you all as well. And especially the digital economy. I mean, these are interrelated things, for entrepreneurs. Without digitalization, getting into that space, you cannot do that. I mean, India has done it. And we can easily do that. And we are talking about digital ID card kind of thing. Hopefully it'll see the light at the end of the day. But if that happens, at least we'll make that first step to make that happen. So let's get into action. That's my only final remark that I have. And let's do it. Otherwise, we'll be talking without any action. Yeah.
Thank you, and I think our audience has been very gracious. There are many known persons in this audience. Sohan, do you want to?
Yes, thank you very much, Gayani Alwis. And I would like to thank the session chair. And now I think we can open the floor for questions and answers. So we are online in Zoom as well. So there will be questions that will be posted through Zoom. And the audience is, it's open for questions and answers.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, just a minute.
Yeah, you're loud enough, I think.
Thank you very much. I learned a lot of things about the problems women are facing, and I'm sure Gayani Korea Foundation will take note of all those things, and we'll try our best to help. But there is one thing that I was unable to understand is that you did not mention this, that the government is now having an action plan on women. Yes. That was, you didn't mention a word about it. None of you spoke about it. On March 8th, the president was there, and he launched the program. It was supported by the UN. It was a result of a discussion with the UN Security Council. And now they have started implementing it. And what is interesting in that, I did not read the plan as such. So I expected you to come and tell us about it today, and there was nothing, because my approach to these problems is a holistic. You cannot deal with the problems of women or anyone else individually, piecemeal. You see? So, and it has to be incorporated into a national development planning process. And that is not there. We have been talking about these problems of women and children and all that kind of things for donkey's years, but nothing is happening. That is because we don't take into account the holistic nature of the problems. Everything is interrelated. Now take, for instance, there was a mention about transport, about telecommunication, and all this. All those things are interrelated. You can't have development of transport without looking at all the other issues. So the point that I'm trying to make is that, you see, it is very important to have a strategy. I'll tell you a very interesting thing about Singapore. You know the situation in Singapore? I know because I know a young lady who goes to work on her own. Her husband goes to work alone. She goes to work alone, and then the son goes to school. There is a bus coming to take the son. And very often, when the husband is not available, she goes for a walk at 10 o'clock in the night. Safe, no problems. You see? And very often, she comes by metro. That's half an hour. She prefers to do that because she says it's much better than, taking a taxi. That because she works, sometimes she works very late. And there is no discrimination where she is concerned, even in the workplace. Of course, there are people there, low down the order, who try to do things which are not very helpful to her. But she can overcome. It's not just the law. The most important thing is women are valued. You see, we must also learn the role women play. We have to work together. You see, the potential. Now we can see this happening. You can see how young ladies go get educated and what contribution they can make. Why don't we spread this out? Give this, make this available to all and sundry. But you can't do that piecemeal. It has to be within an overall national development process. So I don't want to take your time on that. It's not just because Singapore is good, but they value the role of women. We will also, when we start looking for people who can make a contribution to society as a whole. You spoke of digitalization. Yes, this is an area in which women can stay at home and do some work and still help the country to go forward. Now why? Now who should do that? This is where the development strategists, the national planning authorities, the cabinet of ministers should do. So the point that I wanted to make, I didn't want to talk too much. I just wanted to ask you why you did not speak about this national plan, action plan. It's called the National Action Plan on Women, and launched March, 8th March, with the President being the chief guest.
Action plan.
So, but we will, you see, Annie, you give a challenge to Gayani Korea Foundation, and we have included this as one of the subjects where we have prepared issues papers. We are taking it further forward through a program called what Korea? Freda Korea Awards system. And it's not just a question of awards. You must have seen the newspaper. It's a question of getting people to look at issues facing women and how some women have been able to overcome the problems and spread the story around. And you will, of course, I don't want to take too much of time on it. This is something which can be, Shirani is here. She's a person who can give you, in case you're interested, because we have launched this project, and that is the way of appreciating the role some women play in empowering the families, and from which all the others can learn. There are fantastic stories. You see, we say that some women are doing well internationally in sports and in various other fields, but the way some women have acted in their own families to emancipate the families is fantastic. So we are collecting all that knowledge and bringing them together. And if you want some, or shall I ask, Shirani, can you make us? Huh? Okay. Okay, she's going to do that. So anyway, I don't want to take too much of your time because this is... Thank you. Okay. Thanks.
Lloyd and ma'am, over to you.
Thank you very much for the very comprehensive presentation, Gayani. I think you have covered a lot of challenges that women face. I would like to incorporate one more thing. That's about attitudinal changes, the changes in attitudes. I wouldn't say the attitudes of, let's say, men, but in general. Why I'm saying that is, in public forums and in public discussions, we, employers basically say, there is no gender biasness and gender neutral in advertisements, you see, all that. But when it comes to recruitment, no. Now, for an example, if you take my brother-in-law, he says, oh, we don't take women because they're problematic. Why? They get pregnant, leave, when husband falls sick, and then, the woman is at home when children fall sick, and, she takes leave, and then when you tell them to work after work, after, working hours, no transportation, harima kuru, harima, problematic, and then when husband's mother is sick, and then again the woman is the one who is at home. So we really need to make a real, attitudinal change, and I think women can do that, and we have a bigger responsibility rather than because we, take care of most of the house chores and we are with our children. So that's one thing that I want to just tell you. And then the second point is about labor force participation. When you look at these statistics, about maybe 60% of women are educated, but the contribution to the GDP is about, say, half of that, about 35%. So, but men, of course, 35% of men, but contribution to the GDP is about, so double of that amount. What is the reason? Now, when you look at even these graduates, they are mostly, when you look at the statistics, the arts graduates, right? But if the market is, the market demand is something else, and you're producing, the graduates who are not employable. So we have to really look at the core problem of our education, and then these changes have to be done. I'm not saying I'm an art graduate, but what I'm saying is, you have to basically produce what market requires. If market needs IT graduates and you're producing the humanities and social science in bulk, and then you say, okay, the women participation is low, right? That's one. And then there's another point that you raised. When in time to come, I don't know whether I got this point right. In time to come, now with the private education, they are ahead of state, the graduates. Now there's a path. The real reason is, Gayani, because people who have money with O-levels, now you just do, when we do A-levels, we do a good 2.5 years of A-levels. Now you can bypass that and you do your foundation right after O-levels, and 8 months you cover your 2.5 years A-levels, and by the time a local a student who does A-level and get into the university, private sector, they are done with their degree. So where is the problem? Again, it's a social problem which we again have to address, because in state universities there is no such path, but in private universities, because of these all money-making business, education has become a real problem, and then they are all just taking these shortcuts. That's the real issue. And the other thing is, all these issues we have been just talking over and over. This is not my specialty, of course, all this gender stuff, but we have heard about all these things and we have been talking over and over, but we are just, the problems persist. So now let's see, we just talk to these pockets of people. What is the language that we use? English. And it's a very small crowd of people come and hash bash gala kata karana. But the real issues, you got to understand where the real,
මිනිස්සුන්ට තේරෙන භාෂාවෙන් you have to talk to the pulses of people. You have to go out there. We got to understand the mistakes that we make, right? මිනිස්සුන්ට තේරෙන majority එකට තේරෙන භාෂාවෙන් අපි කතා කරන්න ඕනේ. ඇවිල්ලා මේ pocket meeting එකක් තියලා ගොඩාක් සල්ලි වියදම් කරලා ඉවරලා අපි මේ පොඩ්ඩකට කතා කරලා ඉංග්‍රීසියෙන් ලියලා කීයෙන් කී දෙනාටද මේක තේරෙන්නේ? එතකොට අපිට මේ ප්‍රශ්න එකක්වත් විසඳන්න පුළුවන්ද? So I think we have to really think of the real issues. I think you don't have to do a lot of things, but thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that was a very comprehensive observation and some real questions. Just to merge your queries with what Dr. Lloyd said, that is why these pocket conversations have to be a part of a wider, holistic national agenda, and especially in the strategic roadmap that was given. Mass media sensitization in English, Sinhala and Tamil on TV, radio was heavily prescribed, and in fact we have impressed it upon the Minister of Labour also because he himself is a past media personality. Your point is very relevant, very valid, but if we fit in these small pocket dialogues into what Dr. Lloyd said, the national agenda, and make it mainstream, I think that's where wheels will churn faster. Yes, you have a question, ma'am.
Not so much a question, but just a suggestion. I think women, because we are the ones who fight for all these women participation, we can concentrate on harassment in transport. And if you see, it's mainly the buses. We have 25,000 buses, I think, in Sri Lanka. And most of them are private buses. So we can fight to have cameras fixed in the private buses. At least the government, 5,000 government buses will follow suit, which won't be such a problem. Private buses, definitely. And that won't be difficult for these bus magnates, I'm sure. So if we do push it.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, I would like to suggest if you can introduce yourself and your organization before you ask the question. That will be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
I'm Rani Ratnayaka. I'm an entrepreneur, and I work for myself, but I'm attached also to the Women's Chamber and a few other women's groups. Thank you. I think I've put my suggestion forward.
I think there's a gentleman. Maybe you would like to. There's a question from this side. May I?
Subject for me. Just an opinion. Now, in Sri Lanka, we say, okay, compared to the Western world, our regard and value for women is less. But if you really look at it, the first army general in the world was appointed only this year on the Women's Day, that US lady. There is still no Formula 1 driver who is a female. But if you look at our history, when father of our civilization, King Vijay, came, the country was led by a lady promoting apparel industry, right? And then, I'm saying these are facts, right? The longest serving president and prime minister of this country are women, both from the Horogolla Walau, and those were also the first prime minister and the first lady president of the entire planet, right? So, there is something wrong here where we don't know how to push this message. I don't know exactly where we went wrong, but there is a problem. The problem is the message. It's not that we don't have women, powerful women or incapable women, or women are lesser. We have set examples from the start of our modern civilization. We should, I don't know, maybe, and also I'll tell you something else. I was fortunate enough to have parents who gave me an environment where I learned to cook. I learned to cook when I was 12. I learned to wash my own clothes and iron when I was 14. I learned to manage my own household when I was 20. So that was that's an exceptional case. But see, home science, why is it only taught at girls' schools? And also, why is it essential? Now, we are trying to say we should liberate women, empower women, educate women. Okay, we should do home science for boys. There is, so that earlier, and your presentation, even that vacuum cleaner thing. Now, the stereotyping of women in the kitchen and doing cleaning and all that. So the Western world broke out of that image in the 1960s, that famous lawsuit, was that lady who fought for this equal rights for women of 1960 something, I can't remember the case, where the equal wages and Ruth, I forget her name. Ruth, so anyway, that case. So that was a milestone case where I mean, you can take Rosa Parks and all these examples, but they broke away from it with milestone cases and milestone turning points which are legislatively publicized. So that so even that thing about, madam, your bus harassment thing, you can fix CCTV, put a policeman. One lady has to take a pepper spray and spray it at the genital of a man. And maybe you do it about 3-4 times. No, I'm being serious. That is the best way, in my opinion, to send the message, hey, don't touch our women. Right? So the problem is, our problem is the message. Again, I'm saying, it's the way we broadcast the message. I think you ladies are in positions powerful enough to influence the broadcast of the women empowerment message. So my humble request is to use that, and somehow, like I said, from the history, the leading lady of this country, Gayani Kapukatino, that, apparel industry lady, yes, it's a bit stereotypical, but let's not go there. My point is that the lady was leading the country when King Vijay came here. So
thank you. Thanks for the spirited message, and thanks for voicing it out candidly. We have another voice.
You're a he for she, I must say, Gayan, right? He for she means you're a supporter of women's cause. So you yourself can do it. Strong.
Right.
We need more strong male advocates.
I'm Dr. Tilina Vanigasekara, representing the Ministry of Health. So thank you, Gayani Madam, elaborating on these kind of avenue to the women. So my point is, now as one of the panelists said, flexible work for the women. So now, according to the central bank assessment, the data, unemployment in women, mostly educated women, it is now rising. After the COVID pandemic, it is more. I think about 42% unemployed women among the educated crowd. So that is one thing that we need to think about, because for the education also we are spending a lot, right? And then after the education, what is the return on investment we are getting? So in case, as she said, consultancy, but women who need for entrepreneurship, I know most of the women from the engineering background, so they wanted to start their own business at their ease. But are we providing enough ground for them to at least register in their businesses? So it is getting delay. I also once as a doctor wanted to have my own shop on food business before the COVID. But when I applied for the registration of my logo, it took 2.5 years to register the logo even. So this is the case that we need to address on these women empowerment, and also contributing their challenges and all these enthusiastic thoughts towards the GDP gain. And also, let's say the STEM education. We are going to talk about 1,000 words. Now this time also, I think Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Science and Technology wanted to promote that. Are we having enough facilities? So I am as a representative from WISE International, like Women in Science and Engineering. So I went to one of the faraway village of Anuradhapura. So we were just having thought of speaking about this science education. When I visited there, I saw even the education is a problem. So no classrooms, and almost more schools are closing because of no children. Why no children? The employment starting at the beginning at the school level, because children are paid more than the adults in the off crowd, because I don't know for what reason. So that is the issue there. So people are sending their children for work, especially in the canes industry. So people are, mothers and fathers are at home, right? If I'm wrong, just check it with. This is some manipulations happening around the ground level. And the other thing is, the STEM field, we are lacking, even in the ministry setting, we are lacking to recruit employees. So now we have open for the art graduates also, applying for nursing field and also midwifery field. So that is one thing that we have initiated at the ministry level. Even that, people are not coming. Why? Getting delayed of processing all these things until the employment come to the hand, right? The processing is too, too long procedures. So if even thinking about this economic crisis, if we can lose these laws and criteria of recruitment and taking why this is delays, even for recruiting nursing student, calling application up to the level of recruiting the people to the college or the institution, it gave, I think, dragging about more than 2.5 years. So who are waiting? After putting the application, people need some form of earning. So why we can't, accelerate these proceedings? And also losing our, good old and criteria of recruiting. So those are the things that we need to address with. And also, let's say information penetration. We are talking about thousands of policies, treaties, all these fashionable things. But do, as she said, common people understand these things. There are rights and there are opportunities. No, I don't think, because most of the crowd, those who are meeting each other, are educated and most influential people whom are having some form of earning. But the people who are at the ground setting, they don't know about their rights and they don't know their opportunities even. So when they reach some form of, the institutions that they could ask for help, they are not having, targeted or not having given the opportunity for them to initiate the businesses or whatever. So these are the things that we need to, really act on that. We are having laws enough.
Thank you, Dr.
Sri Lanka
Delina.
is one of the places, those who are having more, books of laws and also treaties and also these kind of MOUs and most of the things. But are we really practicing those? So thank you for giving me the opportunity to raise this voice. Thank you all.
Thank you. We will actually try to collate all the inputs you gave. I'm sure Sohan would help because we are recording the session. We'll have. And ma'am, the last question would be yours.
Yeah, actually I'm Dharani Veerasekara, representing the Northwestern Provincial Council. I work as the Assistant Chief Secretary, coming from Sri Lanka Administrative Service. So actually this is not a question, some of my thoughts regarding what we have discussed already. The first thing is, I believe that, as you mentioned, we should begin everything from the grassroots level. Since when we work with the public, we feel that most of the grassroots level women are still unaware about their rights and the things that they deserve. So maybe they have some opportunities to come up, but still they are lagging behind because they do not have a proper awareness about what they have to do. And also mentioning about the laws, actually we have incorporated CEDAW and we have Women's Charter, all those things. But in practicality, when it comes to the practice, women also, they feel insecure when they go to a court and try their case. And also when we think about the things like marital rape, in Sri Lanka there is no option to go to court and try it. And when we think about this women's quota, in the local authorities election, we have incorporated that, but what we have expected has not come through that, because it has again become a mere black letter law and it has not been in practice, because they just put women to get away from this statutory requirement, but they do not do it as we expect. And also Yeah, and also I believe that along with the advancement of technology, we have to cooperate our women concerns along with that, and also the cyberbullying, and also these internet-based crimes are very popular these days, and also we should focus on that, and the women will be demotivated to come up in their social ladder and their career opportunities because they will be feel insecure because they will be bullied in the social media networks and sites. So that's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for one thing. It's very inspiring to hear your voice. You said you're a local government administrator and SLA's product, and you have come here all the way from Northwestern Province, and you're a young woman and a local government administrator. So that means the system works. We just have to just put some more oxygen and oil in the machinery. To have you here in this audience and speaking impeccable English when we had, rulers going to villages and said, hats off to you. We all salute you. The system in this country, foresighted investment into development policy, into education, into free health, the system has worked. We all are in this room, the rich dividend, and like Roshan said, if we can also have that similar thinking in development policy in bridging the digital divide. So that's where we had to take this dialogue, and I would like to later on probably talk to you to invite you to join hands with us in the women's chamber as well to do some work together so that we can take this message to the masses through evangelists like this lady. I'm bringing this forum to a close right now in the interest of time. I would like to leave one thought with you. We discussed many things. We want the government to do so many things. We want the other person to do so many things. In the the policy participative dialogue at the Ministry of Labour, there was a lady, Mrs. Menaka. She was the union president of the Domestic Workers Union in Sri Lanka, which has a 4,000 membership. These are our maids at home. And she spoke in impeccable English. And these are the plantation women who migrate and work in households. If we join the migration bandwagon and go to England or Australia, we pay the minimum wage to our babysitter, the pet groomer, the pet dog walker, everyone. Are we ready to make the minimum wage? The answer to all these problems is the person in the mirror. So when we look at our own lifestyles, what we do, and if we are willing to make that change and register our domestic in that union and be ready to pay them and give them that dignity of labor, that's where change begins. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much. Comment came that the voice of the women at the grassroots level is not being heard, and voices of most of the women are not being heard. Keeping that in mind, I would like to invite Ms. Shirani Disannayaka, former director of Sri Lanka Rupawahini Corporation and project manager of the Frida Korea Awards, to give a brief introduction about the Frida Korea Awards. Shirani, over to you.
Thank you, Sohan, for inviting me to speak a few words on the project that I'm working on, the Frida Korea Awards 2023. And thank you, Gayani, for that very inspiring talk. And I'm delighted to find that the project that I'm working on is spot on with your objectives. And it is in perfect sync with what some of the things that you're trying to do. And I think you mentioned that we hope that Gayani Korea Foundation will help you. We have already started helping with Frida Korea Awards. So if I just tell you what Frida Korea Awards is about, Frida Korea Awards originally was one of the objectives of the Gayani Korea Foundation is to give donations and help poor people through this Frida Korea concept. But the Frida Korea Awards 2023 is the first of its kind, and it has been conceptualized not to just find some poor woman and give some donation, because that stops there. Here what we are trying to do is to recognize and reward inspirational women who have, through sheer grit and determination and through their own creativity, who have managed to overcome the problems that they face at grassroots levels, because I don't think anybody bothers to find out what problems these women are having. They fight their own battles, and there are some women who are tough enough and who are brave enough to break through the barriers that they are, faced with. They have a lot of barriers in the villages, particularly like cultural barriers and various other, social barriers. But they have been able to, some of them have been able to break through those and, uplift their families up to a point. And the very poor people have, in certain instances, been able to, cross the poverty line through this empowerment. So Frida Korea Awards is actually, the basis is empowerment of women. And we are trying to do that through a competition, which is Dr. Lloyd's concept. Which we all know that Dr. Lloyd is a dreamer, and he has a lot of dreams, and he's all the time dreaming of various projects. And this is one of the innovative projects that Dr. Lloyd has conceptualized in the form of a writers' competition. Now, this competition is for people to identify this type of woman who has been able to overcome the problems and challenges that she has faced in her own household, and been able to uplift the family status of her family, and also at the same time contribute to the development effort of the country. So the objective here is for the writers to find such women, and this is done at provincial level. Every province will get a prize for the best story, and the woman will get something like 4 lakhs, and the writer will get 2 lakhs. And we are hoping that when we had a massive media campaign. We just finished it. It's finishing today, and I'm very happy to state that the response has been phenomenal. I just didn't expect, actually I was worried whether I will get even 50 registrations, but up to now it is 115 and still rising, right? So I think the media has a huge role to play in this, and I'm happy that the media campaign that we designed has given us the entry point to get to these women. So what we are trying to do is to get writers to meet this type of woman, or if a woman has a story, for her to go and meet a writer and share her story with the writer, and the writers should be able to send us problems, the challenges, the lessons learned, and the other, the challenges that how she overcame the challenges, the strategies that she used, so that other women who have not had the guts to go forward and break out of this would be inspired to do that. Like, in the sense, if she can do it, why can't I? That is the type of message that we are trying to give. And we are trying to get these writers to write these stories, not in the form of just a kind of a story, but we are trying to collect very vital information at grassroots level about the problems these women face and what they have already faced and how they have overcome them, and any other problems that they still have not been able to overcome, and the lessons that they have learned through their experiences. We are trying to get the writers to write, and we are also having, it's a kind of a research exercise. It is not just getting in the competition where you get a woman and give a prize, but we are trying to get to the root of the problem, where these women, what are the problems these women are facing, and trying to see whether we can address this through a policy paper. Actually, this is an effort to jerk the government into action. I actually don't know how many people realize the role that a woman can play and the contribution she can make to society. Now, as you say, the things have changed now with COVID lifestyles have changed, the way people look at things have changed, the way people walk have changed, the way they talk have changed, and the way they travel has changed. So now even where research is concerned, we have to look at it in a different way. Like, if you take this issue of women, you can look at it like just a social, service project, where you just get hold of somebody and help, and you give that person some money, and that ends there. That is not what we want. Now we have to look for new ways of doing things. What we are trying to do is to harness as many women as possible from the rural areas to get into the workforce, as you said, get into the development effort. And that is through publicizing the stories of these women who have been successful, like as you were talking about role models. Right? So, and these role models are not Colombo 7 women who talk English, but these are rural women who have really, through sheer grit and determination, got over the problem and have been victorious in the whole process. So we are trying to give publicity as much as possible, and in fact we are trying to, I think we have some ideas in the future to have programs about these women. Now we are having nine provinces. Out of the 9 provinces, we'll be selecting 9 winners, writers as well as these people. And it would be a good thing to publicize these women's experiences. In fact, I had it in the project, but it was knocked off for some reason. But anyway, I wanted to do 9 programs, 1 for every project, every province, and which I think we will do finally after this thing is over. Because I think the experiences, and there are enough of the responses I have got, and I mean, I don't even have time to eat now, because every 2 minutes I'm getting a call. Ane Miss Sarame Frida Korea apita poddak kiyanna, and I'm amazed because the people from Mana, from villages that I have not even heard of. I haven't heard those words, the names of those villages, I mean, ever. But we are now, through this media process, we have been able to reach those people, and they are now making contact with us. So what we will do is we will get these stories, and these stories will have to incorporate all the problems that are there at the grassroots in various provinces, and we will, once those things are done, we will compile, we will also analyze those, the research. We are giving them, we are calling the writers for a one-day seminar where we will be briefing them on how to go through this research, how to get the information that we want. Actually, we are doing a research project, which Gayani Korea is the main mandate of Gayani Korea is research, not to just give donations. So it's a research project, and we are trying to get the information at the grassroots, which the government will never be able to get, because these are people who are coming voluntarily, they are giving their stories out, and nobody has ever gone there before. So I think it's a very good exercise, and I hope it will work. So far it has worked wonderfully, because its response is, unbelievable. So, and there are lots of people in the rural areas who have, managed to bring up their families up to a level. And so we are hoping that this will work out in a way, and now the thing is that the government or whatever, the authorities, I don't know how many of them realize the power that a woman has to change the world in that sense, Now when you empower the mother, you naturally empower the children. So when the children are empowered, the surrounding society gets empowered. When societies like this get empowered, the country gets empowered. So what can't you do with an empowered country? So it's a long process. This is just a beginning, and we must thank Dr. Lloyd for his wonderful idea. And I'm very happy to be associated with that. And let's hope it works. And we like to work together so that we will be able to do something for our women at the grassroots. And
thank you, ma'am, and we are very excited to hear about this award as well. මං හිතන්නේ අපි මේ හැමෝගෙම ප්‍රයත්නය උතුරු දකුණ බටහිර නැගෙනහිර කරේ නගර ඉඳලා අරලගංවිල ඉඳලා අනමඩුව ඉඳලා පිටබැද්දරට වෙනකල් හැමෝම ශ්‍රී ලාංකිකයන් එකතු කරගෙන ගමනක් යන්න. එතනදී අපි සිංහලද දෙමළද බෞද්ධද ක්‍රිස්තියානිද ඉස්ලාම්ද කොළඹද ග්‍රාමීයද කියලා අදාළ නැහැ. අපි එක දෙයක් වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී හිටින ශ්‍රී ලාංකිකයන් හැටියට අපි අද මෙතනට එකතු වෙලා ඉන්නේ. හැමෝගෙම අදහස් වලට ගොඩාක් ස්තුතියි. මිසිස් දිසානායක ඔබතුමියගේ awards project එකට නියත ජය ලැබෙයි කියලා අපි හිතනවා. අපි ඒකට සුබ පතනවා. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. To wrap up today's evening, I would like to invite the CEO of the Gayani Korea Foundation, Lasita Devendra, to give the vote of thanks. Lasita.
Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to propose the vote of thanks to this session on women and development. I'm sure women and development have contributed tremendously to the so-called the first world, all the developed countries, and I'm sure Sri Lanka is not far away, and I'm sure we will all get together and make it a wonderful effort to support. I was also must just note my daughter is in Vietnam, and she was saying all the women are the ones who run the agriculture business. They're at home, they use technology, they open the gates, they do fertilizer, they do harvesting, they sell the products to the world. Why can't we do it? So, just a note from me. Gayani, author, and the presenter who is probably the best that we chose to write, to be the author for this. Thank you, Gayani. It's a wonderful experience that you, and your issues paper is great. I'm sure it can be the best. We can develop it to bring it up to a level where we can take it up to the policy as a policy document to the government. Session Chair Krishanti, you did a wonderful job. Thank you so much. I think you did a perfect job. She was the former head of HR at HNB, and now she's the Deputy General Manager, if I'm right. Yes. Thank you very much. The wonderful job. The panelist, Eranti, excellent job. Thank you so much. I learned so much from the panelists. Wonderful. Dr. Nisha, Dr. Roshan, thank you very much, ma'am. It was excellent job, so we'll continue to do that. And the audience, thank you very much for your valued participation, taking time off your busy schedule to be here with us. And I'm sure all of you are really valuable to this project. So please do contribute, compile, and be in touch with us, be in touch with the panelists, and make this policy document so important. And I'm sure we can be better than Vietnam or any other country if we all get together and work as a team. I must thank Dr. Lloyd Fernando, chairman of our foundation, who's also the visionary of the Innovators Forum, who decided on this project. And one very key point is women and development. So she insisted that women and development must be given the pride of place and then we will take it up from there. So thank you, sir. It was a wonderful job, thought process, and we will take it forward. Deputy Chairman, Dr. Harsha, thank you for all the support. Board of Directors of the foundation have all, supported this cause, not only by support, by also giving the consent to pay fair amount of cash from our funds to make this event a success without expecting anything in return, which is a noble cause that we have looked at. SLIF consultant, Mr. Sohan Fernando. If not for you, Mr. Sohan, this wouldn't have happened. So thank you so much. It was a wonderful working with you. And I'm sure we will continue to work with you on this project. Our staff, Tosit, Sajid, and Nishadi, who has worked behind the scene, who have contributed tremendously to this project. It has not come about just a while. Well, taking forward, I'm sure we will all get together and take our mothers, sisters, and as quite rightly Dr. Lloyd said, we will all acknowledge the contribution that you're going to make to the economy, and let's all work together. So there are many other projects coming up at the Innovators Forum. Please get in touch with us, especially with Sohan. And we'll invite you for the rest of the thing. And as Dr. Lloyd said, these are all cannot be taken individually. It's all interconnected. So there are 20 themes that we have identified that we want to write. So please be in touch with us and work with us in the future. So my job is very simple. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you. So I don't have a lot to say. I mean, I'm sure we all appreciate what you all did. So that's the end of my vote of thanks, and we invite you for refreshments outside, and this is the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Dr. Lloyd,